Brave New World, new TV series that debuted recently on Peacock, a new streaming service. It's an adaptation of a timeless novel under the same title, written close to 100 years ago already by Aldous Huxley. The novel, which is often described as a sort of sister book, a counter argument to Orwell's 1984. Both describe dystopian societies, but they differ in how they imagine their mechanisms. Where Orwell proposes a vision of control achieved through mainly oppression, Huxley goes for control achieved through access to pleasure, generally speaking, a society that is not so much stripped of its freedoms, but one which chooses not to exercise them because of the comfort of their everyday lives. In my personal opinion, of these two visions of the future, Huxley's was closer to the truth and far more interesting in a philosophical sense, exploring a lot of themes in great detail. Now, I wasn't originally planning to review the TV series, but it enraged me so much that I feel like I have to say a few words. First and foremost, it is an absolutely awful adaptation that only skirts through the surface of the book's philosophy and themes, ignoring a lot of them and completely misunderstanding others. It only really shares the title and the starting point with the novel. We open in New London, a futuristic city where everyone is happy thanks to the caste system that actually starts as early as a child's conception with genetic manipulation, and to a widely distributed drug called Soma. Bernard Marx is a man who is theoretically classified in society as an alpha plus, the best of the best, an intellectual, sophisticated person. But he does have an inferiority complex. It's hinted at that he may actually have been mislabeled as the alpha plus. He actually isn't one. Together with a beta named Lenina Crown, he goes on a trip to a so-called Savage Land, which is sort of theme park slash a place where people still live like they used to, so basically like us. And these people put on this exaggerated show for the visitors to show the absurdities of the savage life before these visitors go back to their utopia. While there, Bernard and Lenina run into a man named John, whose mother, as it turns out, actually comes from New London. They end up taking him back with them to the city, which is a massive cultural shock to John himself, but also disrupts the natural life of society, and we go from there. But instead of going for slow philosophical deliberations or on the nature of this dystopian society, the creators of the show opt for cheap overuse of sex, violence, and action in a failed attempt to make the story more attractive for the screen. Basically, right from episode 1, there are significant changes to the story as it was told in the book, and pretty much every single one of those changes I personally disliked. It is so infuriating to me when creators try to adapt a cherished work of art, and in the process of adaptation, they instantly start changing all of the elements that made that work great in the first place. Why? Why can't you just keep it as it is? Why meddle and ruin it all? Fuck if I know. Having said all of that, I think that Brave New World being a terrible adaptation is not even its worst sin. I could probably live with it as long as the story that it did instead of the original one was good in its own right. But that's not the case. The plot tries to borrow some things from the novel, some things from Westworld, some things from The Matrix, I guess, but it feels completely unfocused and disjointed. It attempts to set multiple things up, multiple different things up, but none of them really work. And by the end of the series, we only get a payoff to one of them. The rest are left open, clearly as a hook for season 2, which I don't even want to discuss the point of. But the writing is not just awful when it comes to plotting. The absolute worst thing is the characterization. All of the main characters are all over the place. They seem to have motivations and desires and needs that are widely inconsistent and change from episode to episode. Particularly John and Lenina don't feel like real people at all. One moment they seem to have, certain characteristics. The next moment they behave completely differently. It is infuriating to watch them and trying to keep up to make sense of what's actually going on. There is also a secondary character played by Sen Mitsuji, and I'm sorry, I don't know if it's the actor or the direction, but the guy just sucks the life out of every scene he's in. Negative charisma, devoid of any life, just horrible. I could go on about the individual elements of the show, but I feel like I wasted enough time already. Don't waste yours watching this series. It's a horrible adaptation and an awful show on its own. Go read the book instead. Seriously.